Chapter 1. The Architecture of Silence. The silence was not empty. It was heavy. It sat in the corner office of the 45th floor, pressing against the floor-to-ceiling glass that overlooked the sprawling metropolis of Manhattan like a physical weight. From here, New York City did not look like a chaotic mess of concrete and steel. It looked like a circuit board. Every car on the street below was a data point moving along a predetermined path. Every skyscraper a server rack holding up the digital nervous system of the global economy. And at the center of this grid, behind the mahogany desk worth more than most suburban homes, sat Sophia Reed. She was reviewing the slide deck for the Singapore merger presentation. Not reading it. Reviewing it. Line by line. Font size consistent? Yes. Color palette aligned with Q3 projections? Yes. Tone calibrated correctly for Asian stakeholders who valued hierarchy? Verified. Her eyes traced the word optimization for the 10th time. It was a favorite word of hers. It implied efficiency. It implied improvement. It implied that nothing was wasted. But as she stared at the screen, the word seemed to dissolve, losing its meaning, until all she saw were letters floating on a black background. She blinked, rubbed her temples, and felt the familiar ache behind her eyes, the throb of a tension headache that had been waiting for her since Tuesday morning. "Boss," Marcus said. He didn't knock. There was no need. He was part of the infrastructure, an extension of the workflow, standing outside the double doors. "Come in," Sophia said, her voice raspy. Marcus stepped inside, closing the door softly. He was 32, young for an executive assistant, but old enough to have seen how many different versions of Sophia Reed there were. There was the Iron Lady, who signed contracts in 3 languages without blinking. There was the burned-out woman, who sometimes cried in the elevator on Friday afternoons because the fluorescent lights hummed a frequency that triggered migraines. There was also the woman sitting here now, looking at a slide deck with dead eyes. "The Henderson account called," Marcus said. He placed a tablet on the edge of her desk. "They want reassurances. They're worried about the timeline shift." Sophia tapped her pen against the glass surface of the desk. Asterisk click, 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 asterisk, a rhythmic sound that marked time. "And what do I say?" "I drafted a response suggesting they trust the engineering team we assigned to oversee the transition. It aligns with your previous assurance strategy." Sophia scrolled through the draft. It was perfect, polished, safe. "It's too defensive," she said finally. "They don't want reassurance. They want guarantees. But I can't give them guarantees on market volatility. That's what you've told me all week. We know the markets are volatile." Marcus took a step closer, lowering his voice. "But you haven't slept in 6 hours, Sophia. You ordered coffee delivery at 4 o'clock. I saw the receipt. I'm fine. You're running on caffeine and adrenaline. Your cortisol levels are probably off the charts. Dr. Chun says that's not sustainable." Dr. Chun. His name alone felt like a reprimand. It invoked a conversation from 3 months ago, in a sunlit room that smelled like lavender and old paper, where he had asked her if she ever stopped long enough to realize she was drowning. "I don't have time for burnout counseling," Sophia said sharply. "Not when the company valuation hinges on this quarter's performance. It hinges on your health, Sophia. And right now, your health looks like a ticking bomb. You've taken 0 vacation days in 18 months. 3. Actually, 2 of which were spent in hotel rooms checking emails." Marcus paused, choosing his next words with surgical precision. "I found something. A house. In Crescent Bay." Sophia frowned, pulling the pen away from the keyboard. "Crescent Bay? That's in Maine, right? Is it near Boston?" "A coastal town. About an hour north of Portland. And why am I looking at houses in Maine? Unless the Singapore deal requires satellite offices." "No, it doesn't." Marcus leaned against the chair, crossing his arms. "It does require a reset. Dr. Chin prescribed it. He said unprogrammed environment. No agenda. No meetings. Just presence." Sophia laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Presence. As opposed to productivity." "Precisely. I am a productivity machine, Marcus. I am the machine. If I stop, the engine stalls. If you stall completely, the engine burns out. Then the whole plant goes down." Marcus pushed off the chair and placed a small envelope on the desk. Inside was a printed itinerary. One-way flight. Return date 7 days later. A booking confirmation for a boutique rental property directly overlooking the ocean. A list of things that had already been packed by her assistant, because obviously, someone had managed it for her. This was booked this morning. You have a limo scheduled for 1400 hours tomorrow. Sophia stared at the envelope. Her hands trembled slightly. It wasn't fear. It was something else, a sensation of vertigo, like standing at the edge of a high building and looking down. For 20 years, she had climbed higher. Every rung of the ladder required a sacrifice, a trade-off, a calculated risk. She had traded weekends for acquisitions, birthdays for partnerships, holidays for mergers. She had built a fortress of glass and steel around herself, believing that strength came from isolation. Strength meant being needed. Strength meant being irreplaceable. We'll see, she said, pushing the envelope back toward him. Marcus didn't move. You can't fight the prescription anymore, Sophia. Your body is speaking louder than your mind. He left the room before she could respond, carrying the air of finality with him. The silence returned, heavier now. Sophia picked up the envelope. It felt light, insubstantial, yet it weighed tons. She opened the laptop again and tried to focus on the numbers, but the digits swam. She thought about her mother. Not her current, estranged mother who lived in a condo in Florida and rarely answered calls, but the memory of her mother when Sophia was 10. The woman would sit at the kitchen table, staring at bills. Sophia would bring her homework, hoping for validation. Instead, she got criticism. Asterisk, your math grade slipped. Why didn't you study harder? Why is this messy? Asterisk. There was no love in those lessons. Only a constant demand for better results. Better grades. Better manners. Better everything. If you weren't the best, you were failing. And if you were failing, you were dangerous to the family legacy. Sophia learned early that safety was synonymous with excellence. If she worked hard enough, she wouldn't be criticized. If she controlled everything, chaos couldn't touch her. Chaos was what happened when you weren't in charge. Chaos was what happened when people got sick, or jobs ended, or mothers left. Chaos was bad. Perfection was safe. But now, sitting in the quiet dark of her office as the city lights flickered on below, the logic of her survival mechanism felt brittle. Like glass under pressure. She stood up, walked to the window, and pressed her palm against the cold pane. The reflection showed her face, sharp features, hair styled in a precision bob that hadn't moved in 12 hours, dark circles rimming eyes that had seen too many spreadsheets. She looked tired. She looked hollow. 7 days, she whispered to the glass. She turned back to the desk, opened the email folder labeled vacation_approval, and clicked send. No memo. No explanation. Just the approval code. She grabbed her coat. She would leave now. Tomorrow's flight was set. Tonight, she just wanted to walk. The flight was smooth, the kind of luxury experience Sophia usually appreciated for the lack of turbulence. But today it felt claustrophobic. She sat in first class, legs extended, reading a report on supply chain logistics that had been forwarded by Chun Wei. Halfway through, she closed the book. She put the phone away. She looked out the window at the clouds. They were white and fluffy, drifting without purpose. They didn't have quarterly goals. They didn't have KPIs. They existed only as long as the atmosphere allowed them to exist. When the plane descended into the smaller regional airport serving northern Maine, the landscape shifted. The gray concrete and silver towers gave way to pine trees and rugged coastline. The air smelled different: salt, damp earth, wood smoke. It was cleaner. Crescent Bay was not a city. It was a collection of buildings hugging the water, painted in colors that had faded under the harsh sunlight of decades. A sign greeted travelers at the border of the town. Asterisk, welcome to Crescent Bay. Population 4,200. Home of the anchor inns and the best clams you'll ever eat. Asterisk. Sophia pulled up to the curb of the rental house. It was a modest 2-story structure, white siding with green trim, surrounded by a garden that looked like it was growing wild rather than being cultivated. A mailbox hung crookedly on the post. She paid the key deposit, handed over a credit card, and walked inside. The air was cooler than expected. The smell of sea salt drifted from open windows. The living room was sparse: a wooden sofa, a fireplace, a rug that looked hand-woven and slightly frayed. No smart TVs. No automated lighting systems. Just a remote with batteries removed. On the counter, a handwritten note waited for her. Dear Sophia, asterisk, we've stocked the fridge with basics. Coffee is fresh ground. If you need anything, please text the number listed on the bottom of this page. We're locals, not staff. Asterisk. Asterisk enjoy the water. It's free. Asterisk. Management. Sophia read the note twice. The tone was informal, bordering on rude by corporate standards. There was no signature. Just management. She unpacked her suitcase quickly, folding clothes with geometric precision. Every shirt in a row. Every pair of shoes aligned toe to heel. She couldn't sleep. She lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling where a crack ran across the plaster. She checked her watch. It was 2 a.m. local time. Back in the city, it would still be afternoon. She could still answer emails. She could still fix problems. She rolled over and covered her eyes with her arm. The darkness pressed against her eyelids. She thought about the email from Chunwei earlier that day. Something about a glitch in the software architecture for the merger. It needed fixing. It needed her signature. She reached for the nightstand where her phone lay. The screen lit up, illuminating her face in pale blue. 43 notifications. She stared at the glowing rectangle. Her thumb hovered over the button. She could type sent. She could say understood. She could solve it. Then she remembered Dr. Chen's voice. Asterisk. You think your value lies in your utility. But you are not a tool. You are a person. Asterisk. Sophia slammed her phone shut face down. She buried her head in the pillow. She would not solve the problem tonight. Let it wait. Let the world spin without her for 8 hours. The idea terrified her. And it fascinated her. She slept for 3 hours, then woke up, refreshed but anxious. She brewed coffee in the percolator the note mentioned. It was bitter, strong, and tasted like charcoal. She drank it anyway. It kept her grounded. By noon, she drove the rental car, a sedan that handled the gravel roads less gracefully than her Mercedes, but sufficient to find something to eat. The grocery store was a charming little market with chalkboard signs listing specials handwritten in cursive. She bought fruit, yogurt, and bread. As she walked back to the house, she saw the beach ahead. It was wider than she anticipated, stretching out like a blanket of gold. The ocean wasn't blue. It was turquoise, deepening to navy at the horizon. The waves crashed with a rhythm that sounded like breathing. She parked the car and walked to the water's edge. The sand was cool beneath her bare feet. She had worn sandals, but she kicked them off, burying her toes in the grains. It felt wrong. It felt dirty. Her skin, conditioned to climate-controlled environments and polished floors, tingled with the sensation of grit. She walked further out. A wind whipped her hair across her face. She pulled it back, annoyed. Nothing was cooperating. The sun was too bright. The breeze was too strong. The sand was everywhere. She found a spot 100 yards from the parking lot where the grass met the dune. She laid out her towel. She smoothed it out so it was perfectly flat, removing invisible wrinkles with her palms. She sat down. Her posture was rigid, spine straight, knees together. She adjusted her sunglasses. She checked her watch. 12:45 p.m. 7 days. Relax, she muttered to herself. How does one relax? Is it a state? Is it an action? Can it be optimized? Sophia closed her eyes and listened. Seagulls screamed overhead. Children laughed somewhere nearby. The surf roared. But beneath that, she heard her own heartbeat. Fast. Too fast. A shadow passed over her. She opened one eye. About 20 yards down, a man sat on a faded blue towel. He wore simple swim trunks and a gray t-shirt. His attention focused entirely on a small boy who was engineering an elaborate sand castle with the intense concentration only children could muster. The boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, had dark curls that the wind kept blowing into his eyes. He pushed them away impatiently, his small hands packing sand with architectural precision that seemed far too serious for someone his size. No, 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 the boy muttered loud enough for Sophia to hear. That wall's going to fall. The man, his father, she assumed, leaned forward slightly. What if you wet the sand more? Might hold better. The boy considered this with the gravity of an engineer reviewing structural plans. Good idea, Dad. He scrambled up and ran toward the water with a small bucket, his legs churning sand. The man watched every step, his body language suggesting that if the child so much as stumbled, he'd be there before the boy hit the ground. Sophia found herself watching them instead of her phone. The father wasn't conventionally handsome, not in the polished, gym-sculpted way of the men in her usual circles. He had the kind of face that suggested reliability rather than excitement. Strong jaw, steady eyes, the slight weathering of someone who spent time outdoors rather than in climate-controlled offices. His hair was dark brown, cut practically short. His hands, she noticed, had the calluses of someone who worked with them. The boy returned with the bucket of water that was mostly empty by the time he made it back, having sloshed half of it across the sand in his excitement. "This enough?" he asked breathlessly. "Might need another trip, buddy." "Okay." The child was off again without hesitation. The man smiled, a small private expression that transformed his entire face. It was the kind of smile that suggested he could watch this scene 1,000 times and never tire of it. Sophia realized she'd been staring for at least 3 minutes. Her email sat unfinished. The merger that had consumed her last 6 weeks suddenly seemed very far away. She told herself she was simply people watching the way anyone might on a beach. But something about the quiet intensity of the father's attention, the way he seemed completely present in this moment rather than thinking about the next thing, the next meeting, the next deal, it created a strange pull in her chest. When was the last time she'd been that present anywhere? Chapter 2, The Boy in the Bucket. An hour passed. The sun shifted, lengthening shadows across the sand. The boy's castle had grown into an impressive structure despite, or perhaps because of, its complete lack of conventional architectural logic. Walls leaned at precarious angles. Towers rose to different heights, without pattern. A moat had been dug with more enthusiasm than engineering sense, causing one whole section to partially collapse. The boy didn't seem discouraged. He simply rebuilt, his small hands never stopping. Sophia's phone buzzed with an incoming call. Chen Wei, her CFO. She almost answered. It was instinct really, but something made her decline it. She could call him back later, tomorrow even. "I'm on vacation," she reminded herself, testing how the thought felt. Foreign, slightly uncomfortable, like wearing someone else's clothes. The boy suddenly stood up, brushing sand from his knees. "I got to pee, Dad." "All right, buddy. Want me to come with you?" "Dad, I'm 7. I can go to the bathroom by myself." The child's indignation was profound. The man held up his hands in surrender. "Fair enough. Straight to the bathroom and straight back." "Yeah, don't talk to anyone." I know. The boy rolled his eyes with the world weariness of someone who'd heard this speech 1,000 times. Stranger danger. And you're the best dad ever." The boy grinned, clearly deploying charm he knew worked. And I love you. And I'll wash my hands." The boy finished with a dramatic sigh. "That's my guy." The child took off toward the public restrooms near the parking lot, kicking up sand behind him. The man watched until the boy disappeared into the building, then kept watching the door, his entire body oriented toward that single point. Sophia recognized the posture. She'd seen it in negotiations when someone was waiting for news that would make or break a deal, that absolute unwavering focus. Except this wasn't a business deal. This was just a father waiting for his son to return from the bathroom. Just the word sat strangely in her mind. "Father." She stood up, brushing sand from her legs, and found herself walking toward him before she'd consciously decided to move. Her body seemed to have bypassed her brain entirely, which almost never happened. When she was about 10 feet away, she stopped, suddenly unsure of herself, another rare feeling. What was she even doing? She didn't approach strange men on beaches. She didn't make small talk with people she didn't need to know for professional reasons. But he had noticed her movement and looked up, his expression open and curious without being invasive. "Hi," Sophia said, then immediately felt stupid. "Hi." That was the best she could do. She negotiated multi-million-dollar deals in 3 languages, and the best opening line she could produce was "Hi." "Hey," he replied, smiling slightly. Not the practiced smile of someone networking or trying to impress, just friendly. "I couldn't help noticing, Pete." She gestured toward the sand castle. "That's some serious construction happening there." He glanced at the structure with obvious pride. "Yeah, Leo takes his architecture very seriously. I think we're going for aggressively whimsical as a design aesthetic." Sophia laughed, surprised by the genuine amusement she felt. "Is that the technical term?" "It is now." He shaded his eyes to look up at her. "You're welcome to come closer. I don't bite. Can't speak for the sand castle. It has a mind of its own." She moved forward and sat down on the sand near his towel, maintaining a respectful distance. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, smile lines, the kind that came from years of genuine happiness rather than social obligation. "I'm Sophia," she offered. "Daniel." He extended his hand, and she shook it. His grip was firm without being aggressive, warm without being clammy. His hand was definitely that of someone who worked with them. She could feel the calluses across his palm. So, enjoying the view? The question came out more playful than she'd intended, and she felt a flutter of something in her stomach. Was she flirting? She didn't flirt. She had relationships that began with mutually agreed-upon terms and ended when they no longer served both parties' interests. Daniel's expression didn't change, didn't register the subtle suggestion in her tone, didn't perk up with interest or attraction. He simply looked out at the ocean, then back at the sandcastle, then at the bathroom door where his son had disappeared. Every part of it. He said simply, and she could tell he meant it. The response deflated her in a way she hadn't expected. Not because she wanted him to flirt back. She hadn't realized she wanted anything. But because his complete sincerity was so foreign to her world of subtext and strategy. He wasn't playing a game. He wasn't positioning himself. He was just answering her question. "How long are you here for?" he asked, making comfortable small talk. "A week. We live here. Well, about 10 minutes up the coast. We come to this beach most days during summer break." Summer break, right? School. Sophia searched her memory for the last time she'd had a conversation about school schedules. College, maybe? That seemed like several lifetimes ago. Leo's just finished second grade. Honestly, can't believe how fast it's going. Feels like yesterday I was teaching him to walk, and now he's reading chapter books and explaining to me why my music taste is vintage. Daniel's smile was affectionate. Apparently, anything from before he was born is vintage now. "What do you do?" Sophia asked, then immediately regretted how it sounded. Prying, invasive. "I mean, for work, when you're not on sandcastle duty. Project manager for a construction company. We mostly do commercial buildings, offices, retail spaces, that kind of thing. Lots of coordinating contractors, managing timelines, putting out fires." He said it matter-of-factly without false modesty or inflated importance. "What about you?" "I run a consulting firm. We help companies restructure, optimize operations, that sort of thing." She deliberately kept it vague. The moment people heard CEO or knew the size of Reed Industries, their entire demeanor changed. They either became obsequious and eager to impress or defensive and resentful. Either way, the real conversation ended. "Sounds intense." "It can be, but I enjoy it most of the time." The admission surprised her. When was the last time she'd actually thought about whether she enjoyed her work? It simply was her work, her identity, her purpose. That's good. Life's too short to spend it doing things you don't enjoy. He said it like a simple truth rather than some profound philosophy. The bathroom door opened and Leo emerged, running full speed back toward them. Daniel's attention immediately shifted, his entire focus narrowing to that small figure navigating between beach blankets and other families. Dad, there was a crab in the sink," Leo announced breathlessly as he skidded to a stop. "Like a real crab. Not a big one, but still." "Did you wash your hands with the crab watching?" "Yeah, he was very judgy about it. I think he thought I wasn't using enough soap." Leo's eyes were wide with the joy of this discovery. Daniel grinned. "Did you tell him you're 7 and you know how to wash your hands properly?" "I did, but he just did this." Leo mimed a crab claw opening and closing, which I'm pretty sure means more soap, kid. "Well, you can't argue with a crab's hygiene standards. They're very particular." It was such an easy exchange, so full of shared humor and understanding. Sophia felt like an anthropologist observing a foreign culture, trying to understand the rules of engagement. Leo suddenly noticed her, his chatter stopping mid-sentence. He moved closer to his father, not frightened exactly, but cautious. "Leo, this is Sophia. She's visiting for the week," Daniel said easily. "Sophia, this is my son, Leo, the master architect you've been watching." "Hi, Leo. That's a very impressive castle," Sophia said, trying to find the right tone for talking to children. She'd given presentations to rooms full of hostile executives, but small talk with a 7-year-old felt infinitely more challenging. "Thanks." Leo studied her with the unfiltered assessment only children could manage. "Are you here by yourself?" Daniel's tone was gently corrective. "What? I'm just asking." "It's okay," Sophia said quickly. "Yes, I'm here by myself, just taking a break from work." Leo processed this information solemnly. That's sad. Vacations are better with people. The observation delivered with such guileless honesty hit harder than Sophia expected. She'd taken exactly 3 vacations in the last 5 years, all of them alone. All of them structured around wellness retreats or professional development conferences. The idea that this might be sad had never occurred to her. Maybe, she said carefully. I guess I'm used to it. We could share if you want. Leo offered with the generosity of someone who hadn't yet learned that kindness was supposed to be strategic. We're going to get ice cream later. They have really good ice cream at Rosie's. Right, Dad? The best, Daniel confirmed. But he was looking at Sophia now with something new in his expression. Not pity. She would have hated pity, but a kind of gentle understanding. That's very nice of you, Leo, but I'm sure you and your dad have plans, Sophia started. We don't really plan, Leo interrupted with perfect 7-year-old confidence. We just do stuff yet. Dad says, the best things happen when you don't plan too much. Sophia glanced at Daniel, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. In the context of sand castle building and ice cream selection, I stand by that philosophy. In the context of actual adult life, I do considerably more planning. But not about everything, Leo insisted. Dad says some things you just got to feel. Have to feel, Daniel corrected automatically. That's what I said. Sophia found herself smiling. Really smiling. Not the professional smile she deployed at networking events. These two had a rhythm, a way of being together that was both structured and loose, predictable and spontaneous. I should let you get back to your castle building, Sophia said, standing up and brushing sand from her legs. It was nice meeting you both. You too, Daniel said. Enjoy your vacation. Thanks. She started to walk away, then heard Leo's voice. Are you going to come back tomorrow? She turned back to the beach. Yeah, we'll be here. We're always here when it's not raining. Well, sometimes we come even when it's raining because Dad says getting wet never killed anybody, but usually we come when it's sunny. Leo, she might want to do other things, Daniel started, but Sophia surprised herself. Maybe I will come back. The view is pretty good here. Leo beamed. Daniel's expression remained neutral, friendly, completely unaffected by any potential double meaning. Cool, Leo said, then immediately returned his attention to his castle, the adult conversation already forgotten in favor of the pressing matter of whether the East Tower needed reinforcement. Sophia walked back to her towel, picked up her phone, and realized she hadn't looked at it once during the entire conversation. Her email inbox showed 62 unread messages now. She opened the text thread with Marcus. Asterisk Sophia made it safely. Hotel is fine. Beach is quiet. Asterisk. His response came immediately. Asterisk Marcus. Fine and quiet are words I've never heard you use positively before. Should I be worried? Asterisk. Sophia, I'm on vacation. I'm supposed to use different words. Marcus, are you actually relaxing, or are you sitting on a beach answering emails? Sophia looked at her screen at the flood of messages waiting for her attention. Asterisk Sophia, I'm working on it, Marcus. That's what I was afraid of. Turn off the phone, boss. The company will survive without you for a week, probably. Asterisk. Asterisk Sophia, very reassuring, Marcus. It's what I'm here for. Now, seriously, put the phone down. That's an order from your assistant, which I'm pretty sure violates several organizational hierarchies, but I'm doing it anyway. Asterisk. She smiled, and in a moment of uncharacteristic impulse, turned on Do Not Disturb mode. The silence was immediate and unsettling. Sophia lay back on her towel and stared up at the sky, trying to remember the last time she'd done absolutely nothing. The clouds drifted past in shapes that meant nothing, going nowhere in particular, unhurried by deadlines or quarterly projections. Down the beach, she could hear Leo's running commentary on his architectural decisions, Daniel's occasional questions and affirmations, the sound of two people completely absorbed in the present moment. She closed her eyes and tried to absorb it, too. The warmth of the sun, the sound of the waves, the smell of salt and sunscreen. All the things people talked about when they talked about beaches, about vacation, about relaxation. It felt foreign and uncomfortable and strangely like something she might possibly eventually want to understand. When she opened her eyes again, the sun had moved considerably. She'd actually dozed off, something she never did, never could do. Her mind was always too active, too full of problems to solve and strategies to develop. Down the beach, Daniel and Leo were packing up their things. The sand castle stood proud and crooked, already under siege from the incoming tide. Leo was taking photos of it with what looked like a child-proof camera documenting his creation from multiple angles. Daniel glanced over and caught her watching. He raised a hand in a casual wave. She waved back, feeling oddly disappointed that they were leaving. It's just boredom, she told herself. Asterisk novel surroundings, different people. Doesn't mean anything, asterisk. But as she watched them walk toward the parking lot, Leo chattering animatedly, Daniel carrying all their gear and responding to his son's monologue with the patience of someone who found even the 100th retelling interesting, she felt something shift in her chest. Not attraction exactly, more like curiosity, recognition. The same thing she felt when she spotted a problem worth solving, a challenge worth her time. Except Daniel Harper wasn't a problem. And he definitely wasn't a challenge she could approach with her usual strategic methodology. He was just a man who loved his son and built sand castles and existed with an ease in the world that Sophia had never in her entire achievement-oriented life managed to feel. She wanted to understand that, wanted to know what it felt like to be that present, that unguarded, that simply content. Or maybe, and this possibility made her breath catch, maybe she wanted to know what it felt like to be around someone who made space for that kind of presence, who didn't need her to be the powerful CEO, the strategic genius, the woman who had all the answers, someone who looked at her and just saw her, whatever that meant when she wasn't defining herself by accomplishments and acquisition. Sophia picked up her phone and for the first time in years, didn't open her email. Instead, she just sat with the question, letting it exist without immediately trying to solve it. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in colors that didn't show up in conference rooms or corner offices. The sand castle stood alone on the darkening beach, its architect long gone. Its purpose served simply by existing, by being created by the joy it had brought in the making. Tomorrow, the tide would take it. And the day after that, Leo would probably build another one just as crooked, just as imperfect, just as full of serious 7-year-old intention. And Daniel would watch with that quiet, steady attention that suggested he'd never grow tired of witnessing his son build and rebuild and build again. Sophia wanted to see that, wanted to watch it happen, to understand what it meant to invest so completely in something so temporary, so imperfect, so beautifully pointless by any measure of productivity or return on investment. She stood up, gathered her things, and walked back to her car. But she knew with the certainty she usually reserved for business decisions that she'd be back tomorrow. Not for the beach, not for the vacation, for the view. Every part of it. Chapter 3. Optimization impossible. Sophia awoke at 5:30 the next morning, her body conditioned by years of pre-dawn conference calls with international offices. For exactly 4 seconds, she reached for her phone before remembering where she was and what Marcus had ordered her to do. The silence in the beach house felt oppressive. No email notifications, no calendar alerts, no text messages from her executive team flagging overnight crises that required her immediate attention. She made coffee in the unfamiliar kitchen, opened her laptop out of habit, then closed it again. The morning stretched ahead with no structure, no agenda, no purpose beyond the terrifying directive to relax. By 8 o'clock, she'd reorganized the kitchen cabinets, responded to 3 emergency emails that absolutely could have waited, done 45 minutes of yoga, and was climbing the walls with restless energy. By 9:30, she was back at the beach. Daniel and Leo weren't there yet. Sophia spread her towel in the same spot as yesterday and tried not to watch the parking lot like someone waiting for a business partner who was running late for a critical meeting. This is pathetic, she thought. You don't even know these people, but she stayed anyway, pretending to read a book she'd downloaded months ago and never opened, glancing up every time she heard a car door close. They arrived at 10:15. Leo came running down the beach access path with a different bucket. This one shaped like a castle turret, while Daniel followed at a more measured pace, carrying the same faded towel, a small cooler, and a backpack that looked like it had survived several military campaigns. Leo spotted her immediately. "Sophia, you came back." The pure delight in his voice made something in her chest constrict. When was the last time anyone had been that genuinely happy to see her? Her team was happy when she solved problems. Her clients were happy when she made them money. But this uncomplicated joy at her mere presence was entirely foreign. "I did," she said, smiling. The view was too good to miss. Daniel reached them slightly out of breath. Morning. Leo, give her some space, buddy. I'm not in her space. Am I in your space? Leo looked up at her with those serious dark eyes. You're fine, Sophia assured him. Actually, you're excellent company. Leo beamed and immediately began unpacking his sandcastle equipment with the focus of a surgeon preparing for an operation. Daniel set down the cooler and gave Sophia a friendly nod. Didn't expect to see you back so soon. Thought you might explore the town, check out the local attractions. There was no judgment in his voice, just casual conversation. I did explore. Last night, I walked 3 whole blocks to a restaurant that specialized in something called coastal fusion cuisine, which I think means they put seafood in things that don't traditionally contain seafood. Daniel laughed. Let me guess. Catch 42. That's the one. Yeah, they're adventurous. How was the lobster risotto with passion fruit reduction? Exactly as confusing as it sounds. Sophia found herself smiling. I ordered a burger. Smart call. If you want actual good food, Rosie's does a fish and chips that'll change your life. No fusion, no reduction, just properly fried fish and enough malt vinegar to pickle your internal organs. Sounds romantic. It's transcendent. He said it with such conviction that she laughed. Leo had already started digging, his entire body committed to the project. Daniel settled onto his towel, assumed his watchful position, and pulled out a paperback with a cracked spine. Some thriller with an improbable title about submarines and international conspiracies. Sophia tried to return to her own book, but found herself watching them instead. The way Daniel's attention never fully left his son, even when he appeared absorbed in reading. The way Leo would periodically look back to make sure his father was still there, still watching, still present. Can I ask you something? The words came out before she'd fully processed them. Daniel looked up from his book. Sure. Does he always check that you're watching? Daniel followed her gaze to Leo, who was at that exact moment glancing back at them. Understanding crossed his features, softening something in his expression. Yeah, he does. Daniel was quiet for a moment, and Sophia wondered if she'd overstepped. Then he continued. His mom left when he was 3. Just decided one day that motherhood wasn't what she wanted, that we weren't what she wanted. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. It's okay. It was 4 years ago. We've both done a lot of healing since then. He said it matter-of-factly without bitterness. But Leo still worries sometimes that people leave, so he checks. Make sure I'm still here. The casual devastation of that explanation hit Sophia hard. She thought about her own childhood, her own mother, who'd been present but perpetually disappointed, always pushing for more achievements, better grades, higher performance. That had damaged her in ways she was still unpacking in therapy. But to be abandoned entirely? That must have been incredibly difficult, she said quietly. It was. It is. But we manage. We're a team, you know, him and me against the world. Daniel smiled, but there was steel underneath it. He's the best thing that ever happened to me. I wouldn't trade him for anything. Does he? Does his mother see him at all? No. She signed away her parental rights, moved to Portland last I heard, started a whole new life. The words were even controlled. I used to be angry about it, furious actually. But I realized that anger was just hurting me and by extension hurting Leo. So I let it go. She made her choice. I made mine. And your choice was him every time without question. The certainty in Daniel's voice was absolute. Look, I know single parenthood isn't what anyone plans for. It's exhausting and complicated, and sometimes I have no idea what I'm doing, but he's my son. There's no universe where I don't choose him. Sophia absorbed this, trying to map it onto her own understanding of choice and sacrifice. In her world, choices were strategic calculations, cost-benefit analyses of what you gained versus what you gave up, the language of compromise and trade-offs. Daniel spoke about his choice like there was no calculation involved, like it was as fundamental as breathing. You must date, though, she said, then immediately regretted how it sounded. Prying, invasive. But Daniel didn't seem offended. Not really. I tried a few times in the first couple years after the divorce. Set up profiles on apps, went on some dates. He shrugged. It didn't work. Why not? He considered the question carefully, his gaze still on Leo. Because Leo comes first. That's not negotiable. And most people don't really get that. They say they do. Oh, I totally understand you're a single dad. That's so admirable. But then they get frustrated when I cancel because Leo's sick or when I can't do spontaneous weekend trips because I have a 7-year-old or when they realize that any relationship with me is actually a relationship with us. The emphasis on the last word was subtle but unmistakable.